The woman standing beside me at the altar was not my fiancée. I knew that before the veil came off, because I had lived this wedding once already, and in my first life, discovering that Colonel Evelyn Grant had sent another woman to take her place was the moment I destroyed myself trying to win her back. This time, I only smiled. The chapel at Fort Halcyon was packed with officers, enlisted personnel, civilian guests, and enough senior brass to make the front rows glitter with ribbons and polished insignia. At exactly 1400 hours, the doors had opened. The organ had begun to play. A woman in a simple ivory dress had walked toward me beneath a long veil. Everyone assumed she was Evelyn. Everyone except me. Evelyn walked with absolute confidence, shoulders square, chin slightly raised, each step measured like she was crossing a parade ground. This woman hesitated at the third pew. Her left hand touched the bouquet too tightly. When she reached the altar, I noticed another detail. No perfume. Evelyn always wore the same expensive cedar and jasmine scent, even in uniform. The woman beside me smelled faintly of rain, leather, and gun oil. Just like last time, the officiant began speaking. I barely heard him. My mind was 12 years in the future. I remembered a hospital ceiling. I remembered morphine failing to dull the fire in my chest. I remembered hearing Evelyn's voice outside the door. He made his choices. Then another voice, Major Owen Price, her deputy, her childhood friend, the man she had chosen over me every time it mattered. He'll survive. I hadn't, at 38. After years of protecting Evelyn's career, taking blame for operational failures that weren't mine, turning down promotions so she would never feel overshadowed, and eventually volunteering for a mission that should have belonged to Owen, I'd bled out beneath fluorescent lights while the two of them discussed how to contain the scandal. The final thing I'd learned before dying had been almost funny. Evelyn and Owen had announced their engagement 3 months later. Then I had opened my eyes here, at my own wedding, at 36, 2 years before the mission that killed me. The officiant turned toward the veiled woman. "Do you, Evelyn Catherine Grant?" "No." The word came from me. A murmur rolled through the chapel. The officiant stopped. The woman beside me went rigid. My mother whispered sharply from the first row, "Daniel." I looked at the bride. "Lift the veil." She didn't move. I repeated myself. "Lift it." Her fingers tightened around the bouquet. From the third row, Owen Price shifted in his dress uniform. He had the good sense not to smile. In my previous life, he had smiled. That tiny expression had burned into my memory more clearly than my own wedding vows. I reached up myself. The bride caught my wrist. Her grip was fast, controlled, strong enough to stop a larger man without looking dramatic. That confirmed everything. I met the shadow beneath the veil. "You're not Evelyn." Silence swallowed the room. Slowly, the woman's hand released me. Then she raised the veil. A face I remembered appeared beneath it. Dark hair pinned neatly back, gray eyes, a narrow scar near the left temple. Beautiful, but not in the polished, calculated way Evelyn was beautiful. This woman's face looked built for command. She was familiar, not because I knew her well, because in my first life, I had seen her photograph attached to documents stamped far above my clearance level. Mara Quinn, that was the name she'd given me. Then, a contractor, a nobody, a woman Evelyn had supposedly hired through a private agency to humiliate me. I had never learned why Mara agreed. I had screamed at her, grabbed the veil, demanded Evelyn appear. Then I had chased Evelyn all the way to headquarters. I had begged her not to throw away 6 years together, and every person in this chapel had watched me fall apart. Not today. Mara studied me carefully. No fear, no shame, only calculation. "I can explain," she said. "Please do." That seemed to unsettle her more than anger would have. She looked toward the guests. My father rose halfway from his seat. "Daniel, what is going on?" Before I could answer, Owen stepped into the aisle. He wore the sympathetic expression he'd perfected over years. "Maybe we should take this somewhere private." I laughed once. "Why?" His expression tightened. "This is obviously sensitive. Colonel Grant sent another woman to our wedding in her place. I think the guests deserve to know why the bride isn't the woman named on their invitations." More murmurs. Owen took another step. "Evelyn was called into an emergency readiness briefing." I looked at him. "No, she wasn't." His face changed by half a degree. That was all. But I saw it. In my previous life, I hadn't known. Now I remembered exactly where Evelyn had been, Hangar 7, standing beside Owen's new prototype command aircraft while press officers photographed them for a classified project announcement that wouldn't become public for another 8 months. She had chosen that event because Owen told her it would secure his promotion. She had decided I would understand. Then, when I objected, she'd accused me of being emotionally immature. One of the base commander's aides stood. Captain Mercer, Colonel Grant is currently listed as off-duty. Owen turned. Her status wasn't updated. I glanced at the aide. Call headquarters. Owen's jaw flexed. Daniel. I ignored him. Mara spoke quietly. Captain Mercer. I turned back to her. Her eyes remained calm. I was asked to stand in for Colonel Grant until she arrived. Laughter broke somewhere in the rear pews. Not amused laughter, disbelieving laughter, I said. At the altar, yes. In a wedding dress, yes. With her veil, yes. And her bouquet. Mara's mouth almost twitched. Also yes. And what was the plan when the officiant reached the vows? I was told she'd be here before then. Of course she had. That was exactly what Evelyn had said later. I glanced at the clock, 14:14, in my first life. Evelyn had arrived at 14:39, 25 minutes from now. She had walked in furious because I'd caused a scene. Not apologetic, furious. I faced Mara again. Who asked you? Her gaze moved briefly to Owen. Interesting. Last time, I hadn't noticed. Colonel Grant. Directly. A pause. Her office. That's not what I asked. Owen interrupted. This is ridiculous. I turned. Then answer for her. His nostrils flared. Colonel Grant contacted my office. We arranged a temporary stand-in. Because the timing of her operational commitment changed, your office arranged my bride. A few people stared openly at him now. Owen seemed to realize how that sounded. He changed tactics. Daniel, everyone here knows how dedicated Evelyn is. This is the military. Duty comes first. I agree. That surprised him. I nodded. Duty does come first. Then I removed my wedding ring from the cushion and placed it in my pocket. But this isn't duty. The chapel became so quiet I could hear someone breathing in the second row. I continued. This is contempt. Owen's eyes hardened. You want to destroy 6 years over a scheduling issue? No. I looked at the woman Evelyn had sent in her place. I destroyed 6 years the first time by refusing to see what they meant. Mara's gaze sharpened at the phrase the first time. I had to be more careful. I turned toward the officiant. Reverend, are these proceedings legally valid if the named bride is absent? He looked startled. No, certainly not. Good. My mother stood. Daniel, wait. I loved my mother. In my first life, she'd spent years trying to keep peace between Evelyn and me. She had died believing our marriage was merely troubled. I couldn't explain any of that now. I only said, Mom, I'm done waiting. The chapel doors opened. Every head turned. Evelyn strode inside wearing her dress uniform. Owen had underestimated her timing. Or maybe my changed behavior had caused someone to warn her early. The first butterfly had already moved its wings. Evelyn looked exactly as I remembered. Tall, blonde hair pulled into a severe knot. Colonel's eagles shining at her shoulders. Her expression wasn't embarrassed. It was irritated. What happened? I almost admired the question. Not why is another woman in my wedding dress? Not Daniel. I'm sorry. What happened? As though the failed operation belonged to someone else. Owen crossed toward her. Daniel discovered the arrangement early. Evelyn's eyes found Mara. You were supposed to keep the veil down. Mara's brows rose. A few guests whispered. I laughed softly. Evelyn finally looked at me. Can we talk? We are in private. No. Her eyes narrowed. Daniel. For 6 years, that tone had worked. It meant don't embarrass me. Don't challenge me in public. Don't make this harder. I had obeyed because I thought compromise was love. Now I heard it for what it was, an order. I said, why did you send her? Evelyn glanced around. We had a classified briefing. No, you had a promotional photo opportunity with Owen's prototype team in Hangar 7. Owen went still. Evelyn's face changed. How do you know that? Because in my first life, 8 months from now, I had seen the same photographs published in an internal review packet. I shrugged. I know enough. Her gaze stayed on me. This isn't the place. It was apparently the place to send a replacement bride. My father looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. My mother looked furious now, but not with me. Evelyn inhaled slowly. Fine, I made a judgment call. You chose Owen's project over our wedding. It wasn't his project, it was a strategic readiness program. He asked you to be there. He needed command representation. There are 9 other colonels on this installation. Her expression cooled. You're jealous. There it was, the word she'd used for years. Whenever I objected to late-night dinners with Owen, jealous. Whenever she canceled plans because Owen needed her input, insecure. Whenever she used my contacts to help Owen gain access to training slots. Unsupportive. I smiled. No. She clearly hadn't expected that. No. I'm relieved. Her stare hardened. Relieved? Because I finally don't have to pretend this relationship is something it isn't. Owen stepped beside her. You need to calm down. Mara spoke before I could. Major Price, I don't believe Captain Mercer looks upset. Every eye turned toward her. Owen's face darkened. This doesn't concern you. Mara gave him a flat look. I'm wearing the dress. I think I'm involved. A surprising sound escaped me. A laugh, a real one. Mara glanced at me. For the first time, amusement touched her eyes. Evelyn noticed. That bothered her far more than it should have. Take that dress off. She snapped. Mara's amusement vanished. I was instructed to wear it. That instruction is rescinded. Then perhaps you should explain why your office told me Captain Mercer had approved this arrangement. I turned slowly toward Evelyn. She didn't answer. Owen did. Administrative misunderstanding. Mara nodded once. Convenient. The officers in the room had started paying very close attention. Evelyn's voice turned sharp. Who exactly are you? Mara looked at her. You hired me. Through a staffing service. Correct. Then leave. Mara handed the bouquet to the officiant. Gladly. She walked toward the side chamber. I watched her go. Something bothered me. In my previous life, Mara had disappeared immediately after the wedding disaster. I had tried to find her months later because I wanted her statement for the annulment proceedings Evelyn had threatened me with. The agency had claimed no record of her. At the time, I assumed Evelyn had paid them to hide the evidence. Now I wasn't so sure. Evelyn stepped closer. We're going to reset. I looked at her. What? The guest can take refreshments for 30 minutes. I'll change. We'll begin again at 1500. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. My mother did not. You cannot be serious. Evelyn looked toward her. Mrs. Mercer, I apologize for the inconvenience. Inconvenience. My mother walked into the aisle. You sent a stranger down the aisle to marry my son. She wasn't going to marry him. Then what exactly was she supposed to do? Evelyn's composure cracked. Delay. My father joined my mother by impersonating the bride. Evelyn looked back at me. This can still be fixed. In my first life, those words had broken me. I'd heard hope. Today I heard arrogance. I stepped down from the altar. No. She stared. No. The wedding is canceled. Owen exhaled sharply. Daniel, don't be dramatic. I walked toward him. He was an inch taller. In my first life, I had always felt smaller around him because Evelyn admired his career. Today he looked like exactly what he was. A major who had spent years borrowing another man's relationship as leverage. This isn't your wedding. It affects the unit. Then consider it a readiness exercise. His eyes narrowed. What is that supposed to mean? You've both been relying on me to absorb consequences. I looked at Evelyn. That ends today. A shadow crossed her face. She understood more than Owen did. For years, I had done things quietly. Changed travel plans, covered administrative gaps, used my logistics contacts to find parts for her battalion, rewritten readiness reports after midnight, taken undesirable assignments so our schedules aligned, introduced Owen to people who could help his career because Evelyn asked. None of it had been illegal. Most of it hadn't even been official. That made it easy to ignore. It also made it easy to stop. Evelyn lowered her voice. We'll discuss this at home. You mean my house? She blinked. The house had been mine before our engagement. In my previous life, after we married, I'd added her to the deed because she said marriage required trust. Years later, during our separation, she'd nearly forced me out of it. Not this time. Yes, she said carefully. My house. Her eyes sharpened. Daniel, your belongings will be boxed. I'll have them delivered to officer housing. The first genuine emotion crossed her face. Shock. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious. You don't get to make unilateral decisions. You made one 14 minutes ago. She glanced at the guests again. This is humiliation. Now you're starting to understand. I walked past her. Then Mara returned. The wedding dress was gone. In its place, she wore dark slacks, low boots, and a black jacket over a plain gray shirt. No insignia, no jewelry, nothing that explained the way she carried herself. She handed a garment bag to a chapel assistant. Then she looked at me. Captain Mercer. Daniel. Her gaze flicked toward Evelyn. Daniel, I owe you an apology. You didn't know. I knew enough to ask more questions than I did. That answer stayed with me. I said, do you have transportation? Yes. Good. Evelyn's voice cut between us. You should go. Mara looked at her. Colonel Grant. I was already going. She nodded to me once. Then she walked out. I watched the doors close behind her. I didn't know yet that 23 days later I would see Mara Quinn again. I didn't know her surname wasn't Quinn. I didn't know why an agency that didn't exist had placed her in my wedding. And I definitely didn't know that before winter, thousands of soldiers on Fort Halcyon would stand at attention for the woman Evelyn had sent to humiliate me. All I knew was that when I walked out of that chapel unmarried, I could finally breathe. My phone began vibrating before I reached the parking lot. Evelyn. I declined the call. It rang again. Declined. Then Owen. Declined. Then my battalion operations officer. I answered. Mercer. Captain, sorry to bother you today. Major Lena Ortiz sounded genuinely uncomfortable. What happened? Nothing happened. That's the problem. I smiled faintly. Go on. The Northern Relay package was supposed to ship at 1300. Supply says they don't have the authorization code. In my first life, I had left standing instructions for them to call me on my wedding day because Evelyn had told me. Owen's prototype team couldn't afford another delay. I closed my eyes, of course. Who owns the package? Major Price's team. Then call Major Price. A pause. He told us you had the release authority. I don't. Technically. That was true. I had access to a coordination channel that could accelerate it. That wasn't the same thing. Ortiz sounded puzzled. You've handled the last 4, unofficially. Another pause. Understood. Anything else? No. Good. I ended the call. Less than a minute later, Owen called again. This time I answered. What did you tell Ortiz? To contact the responsible officer. Daniel, I need those components. Then authorize them. You know the vendor won't accept my code. Then maybe your project wasn't as operationally mature as you've been telling everyone. His voice dropped. Don't do this. I looked back toward the chapel. Evelyn stood near the doors, phone in hand. Watching me, I said, do what? Use military logistics to punish us for your relationship problems. That was clever. He was already building a narrative. I had expected anger. He gave me strategy instead. Good. This version of Owen might actually be dangerous. I haven't touched your logistics. You refused support you've historically provided. Unofficial support. We relied on it. That sounds like a planning failure. He went silent. I continued. Put your requests through normal channels. It'll take 6 weeks. Then plan 6 weeks ahead. I hung up. Evelyn crossed the parking lot toward me. That was childish. I unlocked my truck. Was it? You know those components matter. Then why were they dependent on the groom doing unpaid work during his wedding? She stopped. I opened the driver's door. You're changing. The words were quiet. I looked at her over the roof. I hope so. Her face hardened. Don't make decisions you'll regret. That almost made me laugh. Regret. I knew regret intimately. It had a hospital room, a collapsed lung, a fiancée turned wife who never came inside before I died. I got into the truck. I've already made those. Then I drove away. The first week after the wedding should have destroyed me. In my previous life, it nearly had. I had spent 7 days trying to repair the relationship. This time I spent them repairing everything else. I changed the locks, removed Evelyn from my emergency contact list, canceled the joint wedding account before any marital funds entered it, returned every gift with a short explanation. I met with a civilian attorney and documented ownership of the house, my investments, and the consulting company I'd created before joining active duty. That company mattered. Most people on base thought I was simply Captain Daniel Mercer, logistics officer. That was accurate. It was not complete. Before commissioning, I had developed a routing algorithm with my university roommate. The military used a heavily modified version through a contractor. I didn't control classified systems. I didn't own the army. I wasn't secretly worth billions, But my minority stake in the company paid me more every year than my military salary. In my first life, I had gradually assigned much of that income to joint investments Evelyn managed. By the time our marriage collapsed, untangling it had been a nightmare. Now there was nothing to untangle. On the 8th day, Evelyn appeared at my door. She was in civilian clothes. That was rare. Jeans, white blouse, hair loose. 6 years ago, the sight would have disarmed me. I opened the door, but didn't invite her inside. She looked past me. You changed the locks. Yes. My belongings. Delivered Tuesday. You sent them to temporary quarters. You live on base. You didn't even call. You didn't come to our wedding. Her lips tightened. I came 39 minutes late. This time she reacted. How do you know it was 39? Damn. I leaned against the frame. I looked at the clock. It was plausible. She studied me. I've been trying to understand what's happening. Nothing complicated. You ended a 6-year relationship in front of 200 people. No. I ended it after you sent a substitute bride. You keep saying that like I intended to deceive you. You did. No. I intended to preserve the ceremony until I could get there. I stared at her. She genuinely believed that distinction mattered. Evelyn, what did you expect Mara to do if you were still absent when the vows began? Her expression shifted. Owen said he'd manage the timing. There it was. Owen. Always Owen. I asked, why did Mara agree? I don't know. You hired her. My office did. Which office? Silence. You don't know. It was handled by Owen. Her eyes cooled. Why are you obsessed with him? I'm not. Everything comes back to Owen. Because apparently my wedding logistics came back to Owen. She crossed her arms. You never used to speak to me like this. I know. That stopped her again. I had spent years making sure every disagreement felt safe for her, softening my words, apologizing before she'd even decided whether she was angry. The new tone wasn't cruel. It was simply direct. Evelyn wasn't used to directness from me. She said, my father wants to speak with you. About the canceled wedding. General Thomas Grant, 2 stars, Deputy Commander of the Regional Defense District. In my previous life, his approval had mattered desperately to me. He had never thought I was good enough for Evelyn. After we married, I spent years proving myself to him. Then, when Evelyn's career threatened mine, he had quietly advised me to make sacrifices because she had greater command potential. I had listened. Not again. Tell him he can call. Her brows rose. He asked you to come to dinner. No. Daniel. I don't report to General Grant. Her expression became almost disbelieving. You've always respected my father. I still do. Then come. Respect isn't obedience. She stared at me for several seconds. Then she said, is there someone else? For a moment, I didn't understand. Then I laughed. Mara. Her jaw tightened. I didn't say her name. You didn't have to. You seemed comfortable with her. After she apologized for impersonating my bride, she embarrassed me. I couldn't believe it. She embarrassed you. She questioned my judgment in front of my officers. She asked why you lied to her. Evelyn stepped closer. Who is she? I don't know. That was true enough. Did you contact her? No. Also true. Her eyes searched my face. Then why aren't you angry at her? Because she wasn't the woman who promised to marry me. For once, Evelyn had no answer. My phone vibrated. I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then instinct made me answer. Mercer. A woman's voice said, you may want to ask your legal counsel whether pretending to be someone's bride violates state impersonation statutes. Mara. I looked at Evelyn. She saw something in my face. Who is it? I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Mara. Unfortunately. How did you get my number? You put it on the wedding vendor contact sheet. I had. Why are you calling? Because the agency that hired me no longer exists. My grip tightened on the phone. What? The number is disconnected. The business registration was filed 3 months ago and dissolved yesterday. That aligned too closely with what I discovered in my first life. Only then. I hadn't started looking until months later. Who paid you? An escrow account. Name. Redwood Administrative Services. I knew that name. Not from the wedding, from later. In my previous life, Redwood had appeared in procurement documents linked to Owen's prototype project, a shell company. I felt the old timeline shift beneath my feet. Mara, don't contact them again. A short silence. That's an unusual reaction. Trust me, I don't. Fair. I looked toward the window. Evelyn was still inside my gate. Watching, I lowered my voice. Redwood is connected to something bigger. How do you know? I've seen the name before. Where? Procurement. That was vague. Enough. Mara became very quiet. Then she said, Captain Mercer, what exactly do you do? Logistics. I know your job title. What exactly do you do? She laughed softly. Contract work. That's not an answer. Neither was yours. I smiled despite myself. She continued. I think someone expected that wedding to create a distraction. The smile disappeared. What kind? I don't know yet. I dislike being used. So do I. Then we have one thing in common. The call ended. I stared at my phone. When I went back inside, Evelyn was still near the entryway. Was that her? Yes. Her face went cold. What did she want? To apologize. It was the first deliberate lie I'd told Evelyn in 6 years. It came easier than I expected. She watched me, then nodded slowly. I'll tell my father you declined. Thank you. She reached for the door, then paused. Daniel. Yes. When you calm down, you'll realize throwing us away was a mistake. Us, not me. Us, Evelyn, and everything connected to her. Her father, her career, Owen, the system that had swallowed me in my first life. I opened the door. I already realized the opposite. 3 days later, Owen's prototype program missed its first readiness milestone. 2 weeks later, it missed another. Neither failure was catastrophic. That mattered. Real consequences rarely arrived as explosions. They arrived as emails, delayed approvals, returned paperwork, questions from people who had previously stopped asking because I quietly supplied answers. I didn't sabotage anything. I simply stopped rescuing them. It turned out a remarkable amount of Owen's reputation had been built on invisible support. My invisible support. He noticed. He cornered me outside the operations building on a Tuesday morning. You're making a point. I kept walking. He matched my pace. Daniel, Major, don't play rank games. Then don't ambush me outside my office. He lowered his voice. Grant thinks we're going to miss the November evaluation. Which Grant? His mouth tightened. Evelyn. Then she should talk to the program manager. I am the program manager. Sounds efficient. You know the supply network better than anyone on this base. Thank you. I need your help. There it was. Not an apology, not acknowledgement. Need. I stopped. Owen turned toward me. He was careful now. No mocking smile. He had adapted. I can authorize you as Deputy Logistics Coordinator for the evaluation, he said. It would be good visibility. In my first life, that exact role had cost me 8 months. Owen had taken credit for the successful evaluation. When a later audit found irregularities, my name had been on every corrective document. I said, no, you haven't heard the terms. I've lived the terms. His eyes narrowed. Again. Too close, I corrected smoothly. I've seen enough similar arrangements. This isn't personal. It was never supposed to be. He took a breath. Fine. What do you want? Nothing. Everyone wants something. I want my work associated with my name. We can arrange credit. No. His calm finally cracked. Then what is this? A boundary? Because Evelyn missed the wedding. Because you both expected me to keep carrying work that was never mine. He stared at me. Then his expression changed. Not anger, suspicion. Someone's been talking to you. About Redwood. My heartbeat remained steady through effort. Why would anyone talk to me about Redwood? His eyes searched mine. Then he smiled. Wrong move. Too fast. Forget I mentioned it. He walked away. I stood there for several seconds. In my first life, I hadn't connected Redwood to Owen until much later. Even then, I thought it was just a vendor. Now he had confirmed he knew the name. I called Mara. She answered on the second ring. You're becoming a habit. Redwood is connected to Owen. The amusement vanished from her voice. How certain? He mentioned it without prompting. Exact words. I repeated the conversation. She was silent. Then, do not investigate the company yourself. Why? Because you're military, he's military. And procurement investigations have rules. You sound familiar with those rules. I read. Mara. Daniel. Who are you? A pause. The woman your fiancé sent to your wedding. That's getting less believable by the day. Technically still true. Are you law enforcement? No. Intelligence? No. Military. A longer pause. Then she said, Not currently in a capacity relevant to you. I laughed without humor. That's the most military answer I've ever heard. Goodbye, Daniel. She hung up. I should have been frustrated. Instead, for the first time since returning to the past, I felt interested, not romantically. Not yet. Interested because the timeline contained something I had never understood. Mara had not been random. That meant my wedding had not been random either. The next change came from my own career, in my first life. I had declined selection for an advanced joint logistics course because the dates overlapped with Evelyn's command qualification cycle. She had told me one. Career had to take priority. I had agreed. The email arrived 18 days after the canceled wedding. Captain Mercer, a seat has become available for the Joint Expeditionary Sustainment Program beginning October 3rd. Your previous application remains competitive. Response required within 48 hours. I stared at the message. In my first life, I had deleted it. This time I typed one word. Accept. The course would take me away from Fort Halcyon for 16 weeks. It would place me in rooms with officers from every service branch. It was also one of the strongest pathways into Joint Command logistics. I had wanted it for years. When I told Major Ortiz, she grinned. Finally. I looked up. Finally. She leaned against my desk. You've turned down 3 good opportunities in 2 years. I had reasons. You had Colonel Grant. I didn't respond. Ortiz's grin faded. Sorry. No. You're right. She studied me. People noticed, you know. Noticed what? That you kept making yourself smaller. That sentence hurt more than I expected. I looked away. Ortiz continued. You're good at this, Mercer. Better than good. But every time something put you on a trajectory that might complicate Grant's career, you stepped sideways. Did everyone see that? Everyone except you? I laughed quietly. Maybe second chances weren't just about changing events. Maybe they were about finally seeing what everyone else had already seen. 2 nights later, Mara called. I found the person who recruited me. Redwood. No, a subcontracting coordinator named Sarah Bell. Real person. Very. What did she say? That she received the request from Major Price's administrative assistant. I leaned back. So Owen arranged the substitute. Yes. And Evelyn knew about it. No surprise there. What else? Bell said the request was strangely specific. Female, 30 to 38. Military bearing preferred. No local family. Must be available for 4 hours under confidentiality agreement. I frowned. Military bearing. Apparently I looked convincing. You did. Thank you. I didn't mean it as a compliment. I took it as one. I rubbed my forehead. Why those requirements? I have a theory. Let's hear it. No. I blinked. No. It's not ready. I told you what Owen said. And when I have something equally useful, I'll reciprocate. You enjoy this. A little. I smiled despite myself. Then she said, when do you leave for Fort Adams? My smile vanished. How do you know? About the course. You're on the selection list. That's not public to civilians. There was a quiet beat between us. Mara. Good night. Daniel. Don't hang up. She did. The next morning, I started looking at her differently. Not searching classified systems. Not abusing access. Just asking myself what I had actually observed. Her grip at the altar. Her posture. Her vocabulary. Her understanding of procurement restrictions. Her ability to obtain information quickly. And one thing I hadn't noticed until memory gave it back to me. At the chapel, when General Grant entered through the side door before the ceremony, Mara had moved instinctively, not like a civilian making space, like an officer recognizing senior rank, but she had not saluted, because she had been indoors, military bearing preferred. No, someone had specifically chosen a woman who could pass for military. Why? The answer appeared 4 days later. General Grant summoned me. Not ordered, summoned through courtesy. His aide called and said the general would appreciate a conversation. I accepted because avoiding him forever would be childish. His office overlooked the Western training grounds. General Thomas Grant was in his late 50s, silver at the temples, broad-shouldered, and capable of making silence feel like an interrogation. He didn't offer coffee. I didn't expect it. Sit. I sat. He looked at me for several seconds. You embarrassed my daughter. Straight to the point. I canceled a wedding she didn't attend. She attended. After sending a substitute. His jaw shifted. I advised her against that. That surprised me. You knew. Afterward. Then you understand my decision. I understand anger. It wasn't anger. He leaned back. That's what concerns me. I said nothing, he continued. 6 years together. You walked away in minutes. No. General. I walked away after 6 years. His gaze sharpened. For once, he looked at me as an officer rather than his daughter's inconvenient fiancé. What happened? Patterns became obvious. Price. He didn't make it a question. Among other things, my daughter isn't sleeping with him. I didn't say she was. You're implying emotional infidelity. I held his gaze. I don't need a label. He tapped one finger on his desk. Price is ambitious. I know. Ambition isn't a crime. No. He's also useful. Sometimes. General Grant almost smiled. You're less accommodating than I remember. I'm working on it. He studied me. Then his expression became serious. Stay away from Redwood Administrative Services. My pulse kicked once. Why? That's not advice. I'm not under investigation. I didn't say you were. Then why mention it? He stared at me. I waited. Finally, he said, because your name appeared in a document where it should not have. Cold spread through my chest. What document? A vendor coordination memorandum. I've never worked with Redwood. I know. When? 4 months ago. Before the wedding. Before rebirth. Before anything. I changed. That had existed in the original timeline. I leaned forward. What did it say? I can't discuss details. Then why tell me? Because someone may be using your professional reputation as cover. I thought of Owen. In my first life, after the failed mission, questions had arisen about unauthorized component transfers. My signature had appeared in supporting paperwork. I had assumed I signed it unknowingly among stacks of forms. What if it had started much earlier? What should I do? General Grant's eyes held mine. Nothing. That's difficult. It is also lawful. I nodded. Understood. He glanced toward a folder on his desk. Your course selection came through. Yes. Evelyn told me. Of course she did. You should go. I looked at him. In my first life, he had encouraged me to decline. The timeline was changing. He seemed to read my surprise. You've spent too long making decisions around my daughter. That sounded dangerously similar to Ortiz. I asked, did everyone know? He sighed. Apparently. When I stood to leave, he spoke. Again, Mercer. I turned. I was wrong about something. That alone was worth hearing, he continued. I thought you lacked command ambition. I waited. Now I think you redirected it. Toward Evelyn. Yes. He looked older for a second. Don't do that again. I nodded once. I won't. I left the office with more respect for Thomas Grant than I'd had in either life. 3 hours later, Mara texted me. Do you have somewhere private to talk? I replied, my house. 1900. She arrived at exactly 1858. No black jacket this time. Dark green field coat. Hair tied back. She carried a slim folder. I opened the door. You found something? I did. She stepped inside and looked around. Bare walls where wedding photographs had been removed. Boxes of returned decorations. One unopened case of champagne. Cheerful. I've been busy. She placed the folder on my kitchen table. Inside were corporate registration records. Redwood. 2 holding companies. A consulting firm. Then a name. Hawthorne Strategic Solutions. I knew. Hawthorne. Everyone in defense logistics did. A major subcontractor competing for a multi-billion-dollar sustainment package. What am I looking at? Redwood is financially linked to Hawthorne through 2 intermediary entities. That's not illegal by itself. No. She turned the page. These are payments from Redwood to a consulting account controlled by Owen Price's brother. My eyes narrowed. Source. Public corporate disclosures and a private civil filing. Legal. She gave me a look. Yes. Why are you investigating this? Because Redwood paid me. That doesn't explain this level of effort. She met my eyes. I waited. Finally, she pulled out a chair. I was already looking at Hawthorne. There it was. Why? Because someone has been feeding them restricted but unclassified readiness information. You're an investigator. No. Then what? She leaned back. Do you know the Joint Strategic Integration Directorate? I did. Barely. A high-level cross-service organization established. After several readiness failures overseas, it had authority to evaluate interoperability across commands. Yes. I work with them. As what? She smiled faintly. You're going to be annoyed. Probably. Brigadier General. I stared at her. She let the silence stretch. Then I laughed. I couldn't help it. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. The woman Evelyn hired to impersonate my bride is a general. Technically, Evelyn's office hired a contractor profile connected to a review operation. I stared harder. Explain. Mara folded her hands. We suspected someone around Price's program was manipulating contracting channels. I needed a reason to observe administrative personnel associated with his office without triggering attention. So you created a fake staffing profile? Yes. And then Owen's office hired you? Yes. To be my bride. That part was not anticipated. I started laughing again. Mara's mouth twitched. I considered declining. You should have. I know. Why didn't you? Because the request came directly through a channel we were monitoring. That made sense. I stopped laughing. So my wedding became part of an intelligence gathering operation. An administrative integrity review. That sounds worse. It probably is. I paced toward the counter. Did you know about Redwood before the wedding? Yes. And Owen? Suspected? Evelyn? No evidence. I turned. Did you use me? Her expression became serious. Yes. The directness caught me. She continued. I accepted an assignment that placed you in a humiliating situation because it gave me access to a network I was investigating. I told myself the substitute plan would collapse before the ceremony reached the altar, but it didn't. No. You could have walked away. Yes. Why didn't you? Because I wanted to see who would panic. I stared at her. Who did? Owen. That aligned with my memory. How? When you asked me to lift the veil, he moved before Evelyn arrived. He tried to control the narrative immediately. He also signaled one of his aides to leave. I hadn't seen that. What happened after? The aide attempted to access a Redwood account from a base terminal. My jaw tightened. So the wedding exposed him. It exposed behavior, not proof. Correct. I respected that distinction. I sat across from her. Why tell me your rank? Because General Grant warned you. I went still. How do you know that? He requested authorization to disclose the Redwood concern. Of course, Mara watched the realization move across my face. You're leading the investigation, the review. Stop calling it that. She almost smiled. I oversee part of it. How high does this go? Unknown. And what do you need from me? Nothing. I didn't believe her. She saw it. I mean it. I came here because your name appears in several historical records. You deserve to know enough not to interfere. Historical records. Your logistics credentials were used to validate routing. Decisions you didn't make. My stomach turned. How many? At least 11. In my first life, those documents had eventually contributed to the case that isolated me. I hadn't known. I'd spent years assuming my own carelessness destroyed me. Mara continued. We believe Price selected you because your reputation was strong and your relationship with Colonel Grant made it unlikely you'd aggressively challenge him. That hurt because it was probably true. Did Evelyn know? No evidence. Would you? Tell me if there were. Yes. I believed her. That was dangerous. I looked down at the folder. What happens now? You attend your course. That's convenient. It's also the best way to remove you from his reach. And you? I continue working as General Quinn. She nodded. So Quinn is real. Yes. Mara is real. Also yes. Good. She stood. At the door I said, one question. She turned. Why didn't anyone in the chapel recognize you? I don't usually work in uniform. My promotion was recent and my assignment isn't public-facing. And General Grant. He had never met me in person. I nodded. Then another thought came. When were you promoted? 7 weeks ago. What rank were you before? Colonel. I laughed softly. So Evelyn ordered a colonel to wear her wedding dress. Apparently. How did that feel? Mara considered it. Educational. I smiled. She did too. Then she left. I began the Joint Expeditionary Sustainment Program in October. For the first time in years, my days revolved around my own future. It was harder than I remembered. That mattered too. Rebirth didn't make me smarter. It gave me context. The course demanded planning under uncertainty, joint service coordination, crisis logistics, cyber-resilient distribution models, and leadership exercises designed to punish hesitation. In my first life, I never attended, so I had no answers to memorize. I failed my first simulation, badly. My team lost fuel access to 2 forward sites because I focused too heavily on efficiency and not enough on redundancy. The instructor, Commander Sarah Keene, tore apart my plan in front of 20 officers. Captain Mercer, your network works perfectly until something goes wrong, I answered. Yes, ma'am. Things go wrong. Understood. Do you? I did after that. I stopped trying to build elegant systems. I built resilient ones. That lesson followed me beyond the classroom. My old life had been an elegant system. Evelyn at the center, everything optimized around her. One failure had collapsed all of it. I wasn't going to build that way again. I made friends with officers I had once never met. A Marine major named Calvin Shaw, a Navy lieutenant commander, Priya, an Air Force captain, Thomas Reed. Not allies handed to me by fate. Colleagues earned through 16-hour exercises, arguments over supply priorities, and terrible coffee. Mara contacted me occasionally. Never flirtatious, never personal. Updates. Redwood accounts frozen. Hawthorne internal audit opened. Owen temporarily removed from contracting authority. Then the timeline changed violently. December 9th. In my first life, Owen's prototype program had passed evaluation that day. This time it failed, not because I sabotaged it, because without my hidden support, its documentation weaknesses surfaced early. Owen reacted intelligently. He stopped trying to fix the program. He started protecting himself. On December 12th, investigators found documents suggesting I had personally authorized several disputed routing exceptions. Mara called me at 0510. Do not speak to anyone without counsel. I sat up in bed. What happened? Price produced emails. From me? Apparently. I didn't send them. I know. How? The metadata is inconsistent. I breathed. Then we're fine. No. One word. Flat. Serious. Why? Because whoever built them had access to real messages from your account. Cold moved down my spine. Meaning, your credentials were compromised. When? We don't know. I remembered something from my first life. A laptop. Owen borrowing it during a joint exercise because his secure terminal failed. I had given him access, not my password, but the machine had remained logged in. March. What? Last March, exercise Northgate. Price used my workstation for 20 minutes. Mara went silent. Can you prove it? Maybe. Facility logs. I'll check. What should I do? Attend class. That's your answer to everything. Because you keep trying to run toward fires. I was logistics. I paused. She caught it. You're considering staying. In my first life, I had planned to leave the military after Evelyn made colonel. Now I hadn't decided. Maybe. Then act like an officer whose career matters. The line went quiet for a second. I said, Mara, yes. Thank you. Her voice softened slightly. Don't thank me yet. She hung up. 2 days later, investigators confirmed Owen had accessed the workstation. Not enough to prove fabrication. Enough to keep me from becoming the easy target. He adapted again. He claimed he had used my terminal with permission and that I had been aware of all routing decisions. Evelyn called me that night for the first time in months. I almost didn't answer. Then I did. Daniel. Her voice sounded tired. What do you want? Owen says you were involved. I closed my eyes. Of course he did. In what? Redwood. No. He says you introduced him to the routing intermediaries. He's lying. He has emails. Fabricated. Investigators haven't concluded that. And you've already concluded there. Real. Silence. The old ache returned. Not heartbreak, recognition, same Evelyn, different life. Daniel, I'm trying to understand. No, you're trying to decide which version costs you less. That's unfair. Is it? Her voice hardened. You've changed so much I barely recognize you. You keep saying that like it's an accusation. You walked away. You cut everyone off. You suddenly knew things you shouldn't know. Then an investigation started circling Owen. There it was, suspicion, not rebirth. Something more plausible. You think I engineered this. I don't know what to think. You could start with whether I have ever lied to you about my work. She didn't answer. I laughed softly. Goodbye. Evelyn. Daniel, wait. I hung up. Then I sat alone in the dark. In my first life, I had spent years trying to make her trust me. In this one, I finally understood. Trust wasn't something I could earn indefinitely, while someone else constantly withdrew it. 3 days later, Mara arrived at Fort Adams. This time she wore the uniform, army green. 1 star. Every person in the command building snapped to attention when she entered. I was in a planning session with Commander Keene when the door opened. Attention on deck. We stood. Mara walked in with 2 investigators and a colonel from legal command. Her gaze touched me for less than a second. Professional, controlled, nothing like the woman in the wedding dress. At ease. We sat. She addressed Commander Keen. Captain Mercer needs to come with us. I stood. No one asked questions. Outside. She led me into a conference room. The door closed. I said, "You look different." She stared at me. Don't. What? Don't make the wedding joke. I wasn't. You were. I smiled. She slid a file toward me. We found the original server logs. My amusement vanished, and Price's aide accessed your account credentials from your workstation during Northgate. Can you prove Owen ordered it? Not yet. Then he still has room. Less than yesterday. I opened the file. There were timestamps, access records, copies of altered messages. The evidence chain was building. Mara continued. There's something else. She placed a photograph on the table. A secure storage area, crates, routing numbers. I recognized one. Medical stabilization units. Correct. My chest tightened. Those units were designed for mass casualty operations. Where did Hawthorne send them? They didn't. What? They were listed as transferred, billed, and replaced. The originals never moved. So they created phantom logistics events. Yes. For money. Partly. What else? We think Price was manipulating readiness reports to make his prototype program appear more efficient than it was. I sat back. That explains so much. In my first life, Owen had risen fast after the program's success. Evelyn had attached her reputation to his. I had helped fix every logistics problem without realizing some of those problems were being manufactured. What happens if this becomes public? Careers end. Evelyn. Mara's expression remained neutral. Depends what she knew. I looked away. Part of me wanted Evelyn cleared, not because I wanted her back, because 6 years of loving someone didn't evaporate into hatred. I didn't want revenge on her. I wanted truth. Mara seemed to understand. You can be done with someone without wanting them destroyed. I looked at her. Experience. Yes. She didn't elaborate. Neither did I ask. The investigation continued into January. My course ended with a final joint crisis simulation. I led a 7-person planning cell. No previous life memory helped me. No hidden advantage. No shortcut. We were given an impossible scenario involving damaged ports, contested airfields, civilian evacuation, and a cyber attack that corrupted half our inventory data. 3 months earlier, I would have tried to restore the system. This time I did something different. I assumed the system would stay broken. We decentralized authority, created redundant supply nodes, used civilian trucking where military routes were vulnerable, accepted inefficiency to preserve resilience. By the end of the exercise, our throughput was 12% lower than optimal. Our survival rate was the highest in the class. Commander Keen handed me the evaluation. Best decision you made. I knew the answer. Stop trying to save everything. She nodded. Remember that. I did. I returned to Fort Halcyon in February. The base felt smaller. Or maybe I was larger inside it. Not in rank. In perspective, Ortiz met me at headquarters. Welcome back. Miss me? Your replacement created 6 new spreadsheets. Efficient. 3 contradict each other. Less efficient. She handed me a folder. Orders. I opened it. Promotion board recommendation. Major. I stared. Ortiz grinned. You earned it. In my first life, I hadn't made major until 3 years later. Not because I lacked qualifications. Because I had repeatedly chosen assignments that supported Evelyn instead of my own progression. This wasn't fate rewarding me. It was the cost of finally showing up for my own life. I looked at Ortiz. Thank you. Don't get sentimental. Wouldn't dream of it. Then she lowered her voice. Price is back on base. My smile faded. Cleared. No. Restricted duties. Why bring him back? Lawyers. Of course, a smart defendant didn't disappear. He returned. Documented cooperation. Presented himself as wrongfully accused. Owen was fighting. I respected that more than I should have. It also made him dangerous. He approached me 2 days later in the officers' club. I was eating alone. He sat without asking. You look good. You look employed. He smiled. Still funny. What do you want? A conversation. You have attorneys for that. This isn't legal. Then it's probably a bad idea. He leaned back. They're going to blame Evelyn. I stopped eating. Why? Because she signed command certifications. That was true. in my first life. Evelyn had often signed what Owen prepared. Trust, the same poison that ruined me. Did she know? Owen studied my face. You still care? I asked a question. No. She didn't know. I believed that he believed it. Then tell investigators. I did. What do you want from me? He lowered his voice. There are documents showing you corrected routing discrepancies. I did. If you characterize those corrections as normal operational adjustments, it proves the program wasn't fraudulent. I laughed. There it is. I'm trying to protect Evelyn. No, you're trying to protect yourself. Both can be true. I looked at him carefully. That was perhaps the most honest thing Owen had ever said. He continued. You think I'm some villain. I think you're ambitious enough to misuse people. So are generals, not an argument. You've benefited too. From what? Your course, your promotion, your reputation as the man who refused to bend. His mouth twisted. You became interesting because the wedding exploded. I almost smiled. He wasn't completely wrong. Conflict had forced choices, but he made a mistake, he thought. Change only mattered because people noticed, I said. I would have traded every bit of attention to learn this lesson earlier. He frowned. I continued. My life isn't better because you failed. It's better because I stopped arranging it around people like you. His face hardened. I can still make this difficult. You're welcome to try. He leaned forward. You should think about Evelyn. I have. She'll lose command. If she signed false certifications, she'll answer for them. Even if she didn't know, that's what command responsibility means. His eyes narrowed. You've become cold. No. I stood. I've become fair. 3 weeks later, Evelyn was temporarily relieved pending review. She came to my house that evening, just like months earlier. But this time, when I opened the door, she looked different. No civilian performance. No attempt to recreate our relationship. She wore uniform trousers and a plain black sweater. Her face was exhausted. Can I come in? I hesitated, then stepped aside. She entered. Her eyes moved over the living room. The wedding photographs were gone. So were most reminders of her. She sat on the edge of the sofa. I didn't know. I remained standing. About Redwood. Any of it. I believe you. Her head snapped up. You do. Yes. Relief flooded her face so quickly it almost hurt to see. Then I added. That doesn't make you innocent of everything else. The relief faded. She looked down. I signed the readiness certifications. I know. I trusted Owen. No. He said the discrepancies were being corrected. I corrected many of them. Her eyes closed. I know that now. There was a long silence. Then she said, How much did you do? For his program. For me. I looked toward the window. Too much. Enough. No. I want to know. Why? Because everyone keeps telling me there were things I didn't see. I laughed softly. That's because there were. She looked at me. Tell me. So I did. Not every sacrifice. That would have become a ledger, but enough. The course I declined, the assignments I took, the contacts I used, the weekends I spent fixing problems after Owen called her, the investment opportunities one passed because they required travel, the promotion packet I delayed because she had a board the same year. Evelyn listened without interrupting. When I finished, she looked pale. Why didn't you tell me? I did. She stared. I told you every time. No, not as a complaint, not as an accusation, but I told you. Memory moved across her face. I could almost see old conversations returning. Daniel, can you handle this? Daniel, Owen needs help. Daniel, this year is important for me. Daniel, next year will be your turn. Next year had never come, she whispered. I thought you wanted to. Sometimes I did. That was important. I loved you. Helping you wasn't torture. Her eyes shone. But eventually love became the reason I was expected to disappear. She looked away. I didn't realize. I know. That was the tragedy. Evelyn wasn't a monster. She was worse for my old life. She was someone I loved who benefited from my lack of boundaries and never looked closely enough to stop. She said, Can we start over? I shook my head. Her face crumpled slightly. Not dramatically, just enough. Why? Because I already did. She looked at me for a long time. Is it Mara? There was less anger in the question now. No. That was true. Mara and I had shared maybe 10 private conversations. There was something between us. Respect, curiosity, maybe possibility. But I refuse to make another woman the explanation for leaving the first. This is about me. Evelyn nodded slowly. Then she stood at the door. She turned. I was cruel at the wedding. Yes. I thought you'd forgive me. I know. I thought you'd always forgive me. That was the most honest thing she'd ever said. I nodded. I know. She left. The investigation broke open in April. Owen had not acted alone. His brother's consulting account connected Hawthorne payments to 2 civilian procurement specialists and 1 retired colonel. The scheme had begun as financial manipulation. Then Owen realized he could use controlled shortages. To make his prototype unit appear uniquely effective, he redirected resources, created delays, solved problems he had helped create, then reported the success. A perfect circle. My unofficial logistics support had covered gaps he didn't anticipate. That was why he'd kept me close. That was why he encouraged Evelyn to rely on me. That was why my name appeared on documents. I had been his accidental insurance policy. When investigators confronted him with server records, banking evidence, and testimony from his aide, he changed strategy one final time. He cooperated, not fully. Enough, he admitted falsifying readiness records, admitted unauthorized use of credentials, denied knowing about the larger contracting kickbacks. The evidence disagreed. His court proceedings would take months. His career ended immediately. Evelyn received a formal reprimand for command oversight failures and lost her battalion command. She was not charged criminally. General Grant kept his position but recused himself from portions of the review. And me, I testified for 7 hours, then went back to work. That surprised people. It shouldn't have. Revenge had never been the point. Freedom was. Mara disappeared from Fort Halcyon again. Her task force completed the review. For nearly 2 months, I heard nothing from her. Then an envelope arrived. No return address. Inside was a photograph. The wedding. Someone had captured the exact moment after Mara lifted the veil. I stood beside her looking strangely calm. Owen was in the aisle. Evelyn wasn't there. On the back Mara had written, "You handled this part better the second time." My heart stopped. I read the sentence again. Second time. No. Impossible. I called her. Disconnected. I tried the official directory. Her office transferred me twice. Finally an aide answered. General Quinn's office. This is Major Daniel Mercer. I need to speak with General Quinn. Regarding a photograph. Silence. Then, one moment. Mara came on. Daniel, what did you mean? No games, no jokes, she knew. The photograph. What did you mean by second time? A pause. Then she laughed. You told me at the wedding. I destroyed 6 years the first time by refusing to see what they meant. I closed my eyes. Damn. You remembered that. I'm paid to notice unusual statements. So you don't know? Know what? Nothing. That sounds convincing. I exhaled. She continued. I think you told me afterward that you'd almost done something different before deciding to walk away. A plausible rescue. Maybe true. Maybe she was giving me one. I couldn't tell. Mara. Yes. Where are you? Washington. For how long? Unknown. I looked at the photograph again. Do generals drink coffee? Rarely. It interferes with our immortality. I smiled. When you're back. There was a quiet pause. Are you asking me on a date? Major Mercer. Coffee. That's how dates hide. I'm told boundaries are healthy. She laughed. Coffee. It took 3 months. By then my promotion was official. I had transferred into a joint sustainment planning role at Fort Halcyon, working on systems designed to survive disruption rather than pretend disruption wouldn't happen. Mara returned in August. We had coffee. Then another. Nothing dramatic. No instant obsession. No unbelievable romance. We disagreed often. She thought I overplanned. I thought she treated uncertainty like entertainment. She traveled constantly. I refused to build my schedule around hers. She approved. That was new. When she couldn't make dinner, she told me early. When I had training, she didn't ask me to skip it. When we argued, neither of us threatened the relationship. Months became a year became 2. Evelyn rebuilt her career slowly, not to its previous trajectory, but honestly, she transferred west. Before leaving, she asked to meet once. We sat in the same officers' club where Owen had tried to recruit me into saving his program. She looked healthier, less polished, more real. I heard you're seeing Quinn. Yes. Brigadier General Quinn. Yes. A faint smile appeared. That must have been a surprise. You have no idea. She looked down at her coffee. I owe you another apology. You don't have to. I know. That made me listen, she continued. I spent a long time thinking you left because I chose Owen that day. You did. I know. But that's not why. I waited. She looked at me. You left because I'd been choosing him, my career, my convenience, my assumptions, over you for years. Yes. I didn't understand that until I lost command. There was no self-pity in her voice, just recognition. She added, I kept thinking leadership meant being the person everyone adjusted around. I almost smiled. I know that habit. She nodded. Then she said, I'm sorry. This time I accepted it. Thank you. She looked at me carefully. Do you hate me? No. That seemed to surprise her. I did for a while, I admitted. Or maybe I wanted to. It would have been easier. What changed? I stopped needing you to be the villain. Her eyes watered. She looked away. When she stood to leave, she offered her hand. I took it. That was all. No reunion. No second chance for us. Some endings became healthier when you stopped trying to turn them back into beginnings. Mara and I married the following spring, quietly. That was the plan. 12 guests. A small courthouse outside Fort Halcyon. No dress uniform. No chapel. No replacement brides. Then the Department of Defense ruined everything. 3 days before the ceremony, Mara received confirmation of her second star, Major General Mara Quinn. Her promotion ceremony was scheduled the same day. At Fort Halcyon, she called me. I can move the wedding. No. The promotion ceremony involves half the installation. I know. Daniel, we are not canceling another wedding because of military scheduling. Silence. Then she started laughing. That's not funny. It is extremely funny. We're getting married. We are, at 10, yes. Your ceremony is at 1300, yes. Good. She lowered her voice. You realize. People are going to notice. I've survived that. We married at 10:16 on a clear Friday morning. She wore a simple cream dress. I wore a dark suit. My parents cried. Ortiz served as my witness. Mara's older brother nearly lost the rings. Nobody substituted for anyone. Nobody arrived late. Nobody chose a career opportunity over the vows. When the judge pronounced us married, Mara looked at me with the same gray eyes I'd first seen beneath Evelyn's veil. Any regrets? She whispered. One. Her brows rose. What? We should have charged Owen for introducing us. She laughed against my shoulder. At 12:30, we drove back to Fort Halcyon. Mara changed in the command building. I waited outside with my parents. The promotion ceremony was being held on the main parade ground. Hundreds of soldiers were assembled. Units from across the installation stood in formation. Senior officers gathered near the platform. I had attended countless military ceremonies. This one felt different. Maybe because I knew the woman behind the rank. Maybe because I remembered a hospital bed from another life. Maybe because 2 years earlier I had stood in a chapel believing humiliation was the worst thing that could happen to me. It wasn't. Losing myself had been worse. The band quieted. Conversation stopped. Then Mara walked through the headquarters doors. Dress uniform. 2 stars. Every formation commander reacted at once. Attention. The command rolled across the field. Boots struck pavement. Spines straightened. Hundreds of soldiers came to attention. Officers raised their hands. The entire base seemed to move as one, saluting my wife, my newlywed wife. For half a second, the memory of the first wedding collided with the present. Ivory veil. Owen's hidden smile. Evelyn's empty place. Mara standing beside me as a supposed substitute. A fake bride. A disposable humiliation. Only she had never been disposable. Neither had I. My mother whispered beside me. Daniel. I looked at her. She was staring at Mara. Did Evelyn know? I laughed. No. My father covered a smile. Mara reached the reviewing line. Then her eyes found mine. Military protocol held her expression in place. Almost. One corner of her mouth moved. Barely. Enough. General Grant stood several places down the line. Older now, he glanced toward me. Then toward Mara. Recognition passed across his face. Not of rank, of history. After the ceremony, as officers gathered around Mara, General Grant approached me. Major Mercer. General. He looked toward my wife. Life has a sense of humor. Apparently. He hesitated. Then said, Evelyn heard. I nodded. How is she? Good. That was enough. He extended his hand. I shook it. Congratulations. Thank you. Then he walked away. I found Mara near the edge of the field after the formal photographs. Two-star generals did not usually escape their own ceremonies easily. She managed it anyway. Major Mercer. General Quinn. That's Major General Quinn. Right, my mistake. She narrowed her eyes. Careful, or what? I'll have you assigned somewhere terrible. Abuse of authority, marriage privilege. Pretty sure that's not in the regulations. We'll write a supplement. I laughed. She reached for my hand. Not hidden, not dramatic, just certain. Across the parade ground, soldiers were breaking formation. The sound of hundreds of boots faded into ordinary conversation. Mara looked at me. Where did you go just now? I knew what she meant. The past had crossed my face. I squeezed her hand. Old wedding. Her expression softened. Bad one. Very. Fake bride. Something like that. She leaned closer. She sounds suspicious. Extremely. What happened to her? I married her. Mara smiled. I looked across Fort Halcyon. In my first life, I had believed devotion meant staying no matter what. Enduring. Sacrificing. Forgiving before anyone asked. Making myself useful enough that no one could leave. I had been wrong. Devotion without boundaries was surrender. Love without choice was dependency. Loyalty without self-respect was only another way to disappear. This life had not given me perfection. It had given me consequences, hard decisions, uncertain futures, a career I had to earn, a relationship that required two complete people instead of one person orbiting another. It had given Evelyn the freedom to face what she'd done without me needing to punish her forever. It had given Owen the consequences of choices he believed no one would challenge. And it had given me one thing I had never possessed in my first life, my own direction. Mara tugged my hand. Come on. Where? You promised me lunch. You just got promoted. And married. Busy day. I haven't eaten since 6. I looked at the most senior woman on the installation. The woman an entire base had just saluted. The woman my former fiancé had once sent to my wedding as if she were an anonymous stand-in. Then I looked down at our joined hands. Yes, ma'am. Her eyes narrowed. Don't start. I smiled and walked beside my wife toward the parking lot, while behind us the last formations dissolved and the life I had once died trying to preserve finally disappeared for good.